Welcome back to Kushka Garage, everyone. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a cool Duramax? Probably not, because you're watching a video about overheating Duramaxes. So let me give you a list of 5 modifications I've done to my LB7, Old Pig, the Alaskan Overland Rig, that has helped it go from overheating to being a pretty cool Duramax. But first, word from our sponsors. Me. Got some hats here, LB7 Duramax hats, a bunch of other kinds as well. And I have the shirt of the day is going to be this LB7 cylinder order shirt. This one's a little war-torn now because I work in it. Pretty much live in this shirt. They are made for the husky guys. A little bit of a gut, but you got some arms and shoulders too. Super soft, kind of hides the belly, and is very, very comfortable. The hat is made for those guys with big noggins like me. Very comfortable as well. Comes in a variety of colors. And we have different styles for you. And you can find links for these things right down below this video in my fourth wall store. You'll see all the Kushka emblems and stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. Our very, very, very first modification that I would do that is going to give you the most bang for your buck and is going to bring you from overheating to well, this one mod might even just do it for you, kind of depending on your circumstances. It's going to be an aftermarket transmission cooler. Let me take you outside and show you the one I got. Here is the one I have. As you see, it's pretty gargantuan. Also, to help with that airflow, I cut out the centerpiece and installed this mesh. But this is an aluminum radiator. It's not plug and play. You got to cut your hoses, cut your lines, and splice it in. I actually have one of these out of the box, so let me show that to you. So here is the black one. Comes with all the hardware that you need, all the mounting brackets. Comes with some 3/8 hose that you'll need, and it is a pretty sturdy unit. Those come plugged off. Thing is probably what, about 2 feet by 7 inches. Pretty nice unit. So let's get back in the truck and I'll tell you my experience with it and how I was overheating beforehand and how this has saved my bacon more than once. Alright, so that transmission cooler is pretty nifty. I picked it up on Amazon for about 70 bucks, I think, 70, 80 bucks. And I've had it now for 2 or 3 years, and it has made the world of difference. Actually, I think I put it in there about 3 years ago now, I think. So, here was the circumstance that led me to getting that transmission cooler. I was overlanding in a POW. I was going up this really steep mountain. 50-year-old logging road, so it's washed out. It's creeping up between 1100 and 1500, 1600 RPM, so the turbo's barely moving. It was hot. It was summertime. There was no airflow besides whatever my clutch fan could pull in, and that thing was on full blast. It was locked in, pulling all 10,500 CFMs, and my engine was overheating. My transmission was overheating. Well, the engine was about to overheat. We were hitting about 220 degrees, and we were definitely well over 200 degrees on the transmission and climbing. That's when I pulled over and let everything cool down for a while before I continued on. And then I knew at that point that I needed to upgrade something. I needed to change something. And that transmission cooler is tiny. The original one is really small compared to that aftermarket version, and it's also tucked behind the stock grill, which has that big old emblem right in the middle, which also blocks flow. And if you have a gasser, 6.0 gasser, 5.3 gasser, same thing. It's just your transmission cooler sits right behind the grill where it blocks all the wind, so there's even less airflow. So that mesh upgrade will be a good one for you as well. And so I plunked this one in there, got an install video for you can check out, but I plunked this one in there. I went back to that same mountain under very similar conditions, also very hot, no wind, and this time I was able to crawl all the way up. I barely even hit 210 degrees on my engine transmission, and I barely hit, was it 180, 190 on the transmission, and they just did not go up any higher than that. Once they hit that temp, they just locked in, and I was able to creep up the mountain, no problem. I can go all day like that. So overall, it brought down my transmission temps by 20 degrees, and it brought down my engine temp by 10 degrees. And I've had questions before asking, well, if it's a transmission cooler, how does it cool down your engine? Some of you guys already know the answer to that. That's because your transmission lines feed into your radiator first. So you have transmission lines in your radiator plus the coolant. And if your transmission's getting hot, it's also heating up your coolant, and which is in turn heating up your engine. And plus your transmission and your engine are mated together, so there's going to be a little bit of heat transference there as well. And so if you can cool down your transmission with that auxiliary transmission cooler, feed that back to your transmission, that's going to bring your temperatures down there, which in turn is going to shoot cooler fluid back into your radiator, and it's going to help your engine cool down. Plus, the actual physical mating surfaces are going to be cooler too. I don't know how much heat transfers between a transmission and engine, but if both of them are getting hot and they're both bolted together, I imagine there is some transference there to whatever degree. So that transmission cooler that may solve your problem altogether. It certainly was a huge boon for the LB7. The LLY, we might need to do a little bit more than that, and that is why we're going to move on to the second mod that I would do if I were you and I was having overheating issues. And that second mod is a free-flowing 4 or 5-inch exhaust. Old pig here is an LB7 Duramax Federal, so it didn't come with a cat converter or anything, and it being a 2001 and me living in Alaska with 0 emission laws, I can just straight pipe this or run it with a muffler if I choose. Now let's talk about why this would be my second modification. So free-flowing exhaust is going to give you a lot of bang for your buck beyond cooling down. But for the cooling down, this is going to open up your 3.5-inch stock exhaust to a 4-inch or 5-inch. Doesn't really matter too much in the performance department unless you're making like insane amount of horsepower. But if you're overheating, you got pretty much a stock truck, then 4-inch is going to be just fine. But really, it's your choice. It's going to be a sound quality, a tone quality at that point between a 4 and a 5-inch. So for the cooling down, when you open up that exhaust, it is going to allow that exhaust to exit your turbo that much faster, that much smoother. It's going to allow the gases to expand instead of compressing them. When you compress the exhaust gas, it makes them hotter. It's going to hold into your engine a little bit longer via back pressure. And that back pressure, the best way to explain it is like, try running a marathon while breathing out of a McDonald's straw. You're not going to get very much intake. You're not going to get very much exhale. And when you do, there's going to be a lot of pressure built up in your chest. And the same thing happens in your truck. That back pressure is going to push on that turbine in your turbo. So instead of the exhaust gas just wanting to flow out, it's now pushing back a little bit, which is going to generate a lot of heat. And that heat is going to express itself in the ways of exhaust gas temperature. And the exhaust gas temperature, if it stays too hot for too long, is going to start burning up your engine components. It's going to fry all your additives in your oil, and it's going to be a very expensive time for you by the end of the day. So it's not good. And plus, if you loosen up that restriction and allow that better flow, your turbine is going to spin up faster, which is going to in turn spin your compressor faster, which is going to in turn give your engine more dense air, which is going to help it perform better. So other benefits of a free-flowing exhaust, you're going to get that a little bit of fuel economy. You're going to get a little bit more horsepower. Because this is a diesel engine, usually when you get more horsepower, you get horsepower and torque, you get more fuel efficiency on top of that. So it's an added bonus. And it's going to sound cool. It's going to sound way better than your stock 3.5-inch exhaust. Freaking guarantee it. So a lot of benefits there. That brings us to the third modification. And if you have an LLY, this is going to be this is going to be an important one for you. Definitely a great for LB7s like I have, but it is going to be a great one for the LLY and any of those newer models beyond that that are also having overheating issues, and we will get into that. But first, let me show you. So you're going to want to upgrade your intercooler pipes. These are your intercooler pipes. This is the hot side. It's hot because you're it's getting all the hot air from your turbo, and that goes through your intercooler, back out your intercooler to the cold side, which then goes into your Y pipe and goes into your engine. This is a full 3-inch mandrel bent, and they make very many flavors of these, but as long as you're getting the 3-inch pipes, that is what you want. So let's talk about why this is important and why this is important for you LLY guys specifically. So the stock ones are 2.5 inch, comes at a 2.5 inch boot down to about the halfway point, and then it expands out to 3 inch, and then does something similar on the other side, if I'm remembering correctly. Let's talk about this. So for you LLY guys, or really anybody with a VGT turbo, but I think they may have remedied this. I don't know. I'm not going to say too much about it because I don't really know. But I know in the LLY trucks, you're still running that 2.5 inch intercooler pipe that expands out to a 3-inch pipe. And I think that is a choking point for you, because you very much designed like a similar fashion to the LB7, and it's starting to get into kind of the newer models, but you're still holding on to some of the stuff in the LB7, like those pinch down intercooler pipes. And with a VGT turbo, you have a lot more restriction than the fixed vane turbo that's in an LB7. LB7's fixed vane with a wastegate, and the LLY on up has the VGT, the variable geometry vanes, and those will pinch down and close off the exhaust at a low exhaust velocity, at a lower RPM, to help that turbine spin up faster. Well, you're pinching it down, and so just the act of restricting that airflow to increase the velocity is going to generate more heat. That's just how it works. Remember what we were talking about with exhausting that gas out your tailpipe? Well, that's the same thing that's going on. You're restricting that airflow and creating heat. And then once that, on the compressor side, all that heat is being transferred from the exhaust side to the compressor side, and now you're blowing hot air through your tube. Your intercooler tube is pinched down, so it's not expanding and cooling down at all. It's staying hot, and maybe even getting a little hotter before it goes into your intercooler, and then by the time it comes out the cold side and gets back into your engine, you're just blowing hot air into your engine, which is just going to make the overall temperature raise even more. And then of course it's going to combust and turn into exhaust and then heat up, and it's going to be the cyclical thing that just ramps up the overall heat of your engine and causes a overheating situation. So intercooler pipes would be my third modification, and it I can say from my own experience that the intercooler pipes did add some good seat of the pants. Spool up, put you back in your seat a little bit more. Engine does run a little bit cooler, even in an LB7, and I picked mine up on Amazon for like, I don't know, 160, 170 bucks. It was pretty cheap. And, you know, I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I'm not going to tell you to buy any of the name brands. I see a lot of the other channels, you know, they got sponsored by these companies, so they'll push the big name brands and tell you not to buy the cheap stuff on Amazon or eBay because you're going to blow it up, but you're not going to blow it up. You won't create enough PSI to blow up those metal tubes. And the boots, if you're worried about the boots, just get different boots, but the stock ones are the same ones that you're going to find on anything else. The big problem with boots is they're rubber, and so after so many heat cycles over however many years, they're going to fail. Even the nice name brand aftermarket stuff is going to fail on you eventually. That's just how, you know, heat and rubber works. My buddy has an old 6.0 Ford Power Stroke with an aftermarket intercooler kit, and the boots fried. They fried on it eventually a couple of years ago. So I gave him some of my boots. Worked just fine. He's back on the road again. Well, actually, no. His truck broke down again shortly after that, and it's been in his driveway for like 2 years. That is the way of the 6.0 Power Stroke, though. So intercooler pipes are very much worth your investment. You don't have to break the bank to get them. You can get the whole kit with the boots included for, you know, less than 200 bucks. Pretty sure you still can. And I'll find a link, and I will put a link for that in the description of this video so that you can look that up and see if that's what you want. Which is going to bring us to number 4. And number 4 is going to be a Aftermarket downpipe. There are many different flavors. I got the KB Diesel downpipe. It's really nice fitment, pretty easy installment. It is mandrel bent and welded. There are no pinch points or flat points like on the stock one. So let's talk about the downpipe for a little bit. All right, so everything I have said about back pressure and pinch points and for the exhaust and intercooler pipes all applies to the downpipe. Your OEM downpipe on your LB7 LLY on up has a lot of sharp 90-degree angles, and then it's flat like a pancake. Air, just like water, does not like hard angles. It needs to breathe. It needs smoother transitions so it flows better. And that mandrel bent downpipe definitely flows a lot better. It lowered my EGTs and increased my performance, fuel economy, gave it a better tone as well. Super happy with it. And that, why I didn't put that one further up or with the exhaust is because it's a pain in the ass. If you ever changed one, especially on an LB7, it's a pain in the ass to remove. I don't think it's as bad on an LLY because you got, was it band clamps instead of a bolt-on like an LB7. But if your LB7 still has the stock downpipe on it at this point, it is pretty well rusted on there and is going to give you a hell of a time, just like Pig did when I removed it. And I have a video on that as well. I'll show you all the tips and tricks and different tools you can fashion and things that I did, like a serpentine belt tool remover and ratchet straps, so that I can get the leverage that I needed to break those rusted bolts free without actually snapping the bolts and then having to drill them out. Big pain in the ass if you do it that way. So that's why I put it later on. It's not a huge priority, but it is a priority, and that's why I've made the list of my top 5, which now brings us to number 5. So number 5 is going to be a cold air intake. So this is going to pull in colder, dense air. Now some people are going to say this is not a true cold air intake because it doesn't have a cover. That's fine. It's still going to pull in colder air than your stock intake is. And I have a nice dry filter on there with a sock. Looks like I need to clean and change both, but it does pull in colder air, and that colder, denser air is going to give you better combustion, and it being cooler is going to enter engine cooler as well, and that's going to help you out for all the reasons that we've already talked about. You're also going to get more fuel economy, a little more horsepower and torque out of this, so you just all around it is a lot more efficient unit than the stock OEM. But because it doesn't offer the most amount of benefit, which is why I put it as number 5, but it still puts it above quite a few other options. Now, all of that said, there are a few other things that if you hit all these top 5, you might as well keep going and just add some bonus cooling options that we'll talk about here. All right, so I know this is a top 5, but I'm going to give you some bonus tips here that are also going to help you out. So if you got a cold air intake, then you might as well get a turbo horn. This is a full 3-inch turbo horn. I ported it a little bit and gave it a little better transitions, but that is going to help you out quite a bit more than your OEM turbo horn, which is 2.5, I believe, and then it kind of tapers up to 3. But for the most part, it's pinched down to 2.5, which is an airflow restriction. So these are pretty cheap, 60-70 bucks. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. That's going to help bring in colder air, and then a combination of having this turbo horn and this cold air intake, you're going to get a little bit of a bonus sound out of it. You're going to get some turbo whistle that you didn't hear before. And us LB7 guys don't get a lot of turbo whistle until you do that. Another bonus that I'm going to add is the compressor wheel. I put a billet aluminum compressor wheel on there, which pulls in more air. It's a little bit taller, a little more aggressive, has deeper wells in between the fins, so it pulls in more air, and that's going to help out with the overall efficiency. It's a lighter wheel, so it's going to spin faster. You get more bang for your buck. You're going to push more air, more combustion, better fuel efficiency, better fuel economy, better throttle response. Overall, it's you know, it's not like a huge amount to where if that's the only thing you do, you know, you're not gonna notice, you know, a big difference. But it's the sum of all the parts that make the whole, right? It's not the one part that makes the whole, it's the sum of all of the parts. So that is the second bonus. Let's go talk about a couple more bonuses. So since you're already in your turbo and you're putting on a compressor wheel, you might as well go to the distance and port that exhaust housing and port the compressor side housing, and then just rebuild your turbo, put internal bearings, thrust bearing, and just spruce up your turbo, because it's probably never been done, or it hasn't been done in a long time. And so what are the benefits of the porting of the exhaust side? If you have a 100% stock and the only thing you do is port the exhaust side of your turbo, the guys who have done this and posted their results, posted their dyno chart results, that's giving them on average about 40 horsepower and like 80 pounds of torque on a stock truck with a stock tune. Those guys with more modded trucks, kind of like Pig, they got the air mods, fuel mods, they're getting upwards to 60 horsepower and 120 pounds of torque, which is pretty freaking significant for just an exhaust port housing port job. I ported the compressor side as well, because when you pull off your intercooler pipe, you'll see the compressor isn't really routed out even. You got thicker walls on one side and thinner on the other. Well, you can even that out, get a little bit more airflow, as well as you can waller out that horn a little bit more and just kind of open up that airflow. Wow, once you're in there, you can see it. I also covered this in Project LB7 Duramax Spool Up, so I got videos on how to port the turbo and rebuild your cylinder heads, port your cylinder heads, port your exhaust manifolds, port match your up pipes, port match your down pipe even, and all of that is going to make a difference for fuel economy, performance. Your idle is going to be a lot smoother, and your exhaust temperature gases are going to be much lower on average. You know, when you step on it, it'll still go up, but as soon as you let off the accelerator, your exhaust gas temperatures are going to plummet, because all of that air, all that exhaust is going to be able to just flow out unimpeded, you know, mostly within reason, but definitely significantly better than your OEM setup is right now. I can guarantee that, and I can guarantee that because I bought this truck 100% stock, and every modification on it I've made myself, and so I've been able to see and feel and experience the difference and think about it, and think about my next move and how I'm going to complement previous mods with future mods. And this is these are all things that I have done and I have experience with, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about them, or other things you're thinking about, or if you have recommendations, things that you tried. I definitely want to hear them, because I'm always looking for something to do. I always tinker in with something on this truck. This is old Pig, the Alaskan Overland Rig, and there's basically nothing I won't try on it. So that is my top 5. Those are some bonuses. Give me a second to think about another bonus if I can. Nope, I think that's gonna do it. I mentioned all the porting that I did on the cylinder heads and exhaust manifolds, up pipes, down pipes. All of that has helped this truck run significantly cooler. There isn't too much you could do besides maybe a fuel cooler, upgraded fuel cooler if you want, but I live in Alaska, so it's not really necessary. I need more fuel heaters than I do need fuel coolers. But that is going to do it. If you are overheating and you do those 5 mods, that should take care of your issue, unless you got something deeper going on, in which case, man, I'm not sure what's going on there. You can upgrade your turbo at that point, get a bigger turbo, and that's going to cut down on all of that back pressure. Don't go too big though, because then you're going to you get a lot of turbo lag, which means you're all engine trying to get your truck off the line. And if you tow a lot and you have too big of a turbo, your turbo is just not going to be working for you. And you're going to have really high EGTs. So make sure to size your turbo appropriately for your application. And if you have a tune, make sure your turbo is set for your application. But otherwise, if you have a 100% stock truck and you're overheating, those are the first 5 mods that I would do in that order. See if I remember it. Transmission cooler, number 1. That was by far the best cooling upgrade that I have done yet. Number 2 is going to be the free-flowing 4 or 5-inch exhaust. Number 3 is going to be the intercooler pipes. Number 4 is going to be the downpipe. Number 5 is going to be the cold air intake. And that is my list for the most bang for your buck as you go. But do it in whatever order you feel is necessary. Do it in whatever order you think is right for you and your application, and what you can afford at the time and how much time you have to install. Because I don't always do things in order, because one part might be easier to install than the other, even though that's the number 3 in the line. Maybe I can get to it this weekend before number 2, and so number 3 has just become number 2 for me now. Things happen, that's life. But that is definitely going to help you solve your overheating issues. Hope you found some value in it. Hope it helped you out in some way. And I hope your truck is cool after all of those mods. If you don't have a cool Duramax now, you are going to have a cool Duramax after you do all those mods. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.